Senate leader in the 8th National Assembly and former chief whip in the 10th Senate, Senator Ali Ndume, has urged the President Bola Tinubu administration to urgently open diplomatic channels with Washington following the United States designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern over alleged persecution of Christians. Ndume, who represents Borno Central Senatorial District, warned that failure to address the issue swiftly could have grave diplomatic and economic consequences for Nigeria, including sanctions, restrictions on security cooperation, and damage to the nation's global image. His reaction followed U.S. President Donald Trump's recent posts on his Truth Social handle, later shared on the official White House X account, declaring Nigeria a country of particular concern due to what he described as an ongoing Christian genocide. Moving on, the crisis within the PDP takes another turn after a faction of Nyesom Wike's allies announced the suspension of the party's national chairman, Umar Damagum. The faction was led by Samuel Anyanwu, the embattled national secretary who had earlier been suspended by the PDP's National Working Committee after an emergency meeting. A few hours after his suspension, Mr. Anyanwu organized a press briefing where he announced the suspension of Mr. Damagum and 5 other NWC members for 30 days. He also directed them to appear before the party's disciplinary committee to defend themselves. Ahead of the 2027 general election, key northern stakeholders on the platform of the Northern Elders Forum and the National Political Consultative Group, NPCG, have initiated moves to forge a united political front for the region with plans to convene a Northern Unity Summit in early 2026. The plan, according to the conveners, will rally traditional rulers, religious leaders and political actors across the 19 northern states to promote unity and collective political action reminiscent of the late premier of the northern region, Sir Ahmadu Bello's era of inclusiveness. Joining us on Political Brief to discuss these stories is Arise Director of News and Politics Editor, Sumner Sambo. Good morning, Sumner.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Rufai. And, of course, very warm morning to our viewers.
Okay, Sumner, the Tinubu administration appears to be embattled. We have the threat from Donald Trump. I don't want to say the United States. I want to say from President Donald Trump, because it looks like, he's turning himself into the president of the world. He says he wants the Nobel Prize for peace, but he's causing problems in other countries, applying double standards. More Christians are persecuted in China. He's not declaring, he's not saying he will go after China and invade China, but he's saying Nigeria. More Christians are being persecuted in Kuwait, in Palestine. He's supporting Israel. Anyway, I've talked enough today about the contradictions. And then you have this Northern Elders Forum. They seem to have found their voice. They now say, oh, they are going to come together to fight President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Do you see a connection here? Is this a case of 2027? Is it an attempt to stop the Bola Tinubu administration with some fifth columnists in Nigeria colluding with external forces to frustrate the second-term agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? That's that about that. The second thing is about the PDP. Well, the PDP can go to court and have an, appeal the judgment of Justice James Omotosho. They can file an affidavit of urgency for the matter to be heard expeditiously. But do you think that convention slated for November 15-16 in Ibadan will still hold? Now that the party is divided, the National Organizing Secretary, or is it National Secretary, saying he has suspended the chairman and the secretary and other members of the party. This kind of division. After all, former governor of, was it Benue State, right? Which state is that now? The former governor, the senator, told us that the PDP was in ICU it looks like the party is still in ICU. What do you think of all of this?
All right, let's start with the first issue you talked about. I think that advice by the former Senate leader, Senator Ali Ndume, actually works perfectly. Let's look at this issue from the U.S. From a country perspective, as citizens of Nigeria, not tribes or as the religions in this country. The major challenge here is that President Tinubu's government has actually faltered by not having, diplomatic postings made very early or way into the administration, and we're suffering from that challenge of having ambassadors who could actually, put our views right across, especially in the U.S. And people had advised the Tinubu administration previously that if they had said that they didn't have enough money for all the whole postings, what of key countries in the world like the US, the EU, and all, just have ambassadors there who are able to project the country at least better? Because in the face of better facts, I think that the US wouldn't have gone the route that they've taken at the moment. And that's why I want to say that there's the call for people like Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, who was the one who, brought that idea of concert of media wars, people like Emeka Anyaoku and all of that. All those people are needed beside the president right now. I heard you earlier on, Dr. Abati, saying that we need men in the room, elders in the room. Yes, indeed, that is what we actually need now. The presidency should not be emotional about what is happening. Are there killings happening across the country? Yes, there have been killings. Who are these people who have been doing this? Well, most of them have been pro-jihadist groups and all of that, and even religious clerics and all of that, who don't have a clearer perspective of what's happening, have had instances to say things that infuriate these actors, including the military that's trying to fight on behalf of citizens. So if there's a call for all leaders of the country to come together and project the statehood of Nigeria rather than looking at it from a partisan position, I think that call is what President Tinubu should be doing. And the good thing is that the government has been meeting. They started talking yesterday. I mean, sources who have been speaking with Arise News told us that the National Security Advisor, other ministers in government and all of that, they've been meeting with the presidency to actually project a united front. But there must be a bipartisan approach to this issue, because that is the only way we can be able to put our message out. And the presidency must look for ways of appeasing the minorities in the country, because the minorities are suffering, whether religious minorities or ethnic minorities, especially in the north. And that's where I would like to situate it together with the question you had asked about Professor Dokna and Sheni and others coming together to come and say that they are going to have a political summit. Look, why must it be only a political summit that will come together? Why is it only when it comes to the elections that we start forming all these political groups and coming for? Why can't we convert a meeting on security? Because the North, for example, is the one at the center of this conversation, these discussions. What are Northern leaders doing to support the federal government? Yes, I know that there's the issue of politics, because whatever is happening right now is not new. In 2014, don't forget, Dr. Abati, you have a situation where APC leaders took themselves from Nigeria, including late General Muhammadu Buhari, who was the then presumption candidate of the APC, and went to meet John Kerry, former Secretary of State, to the U.S. government, and laid down all of this. And you could see that the U.S. took all the things that they said to heart, and since then the U.S. has been documenting everything that's been happening. And close to the 2015 election, John Kerry came to the country, and the U.S. tried to play an influence. Now, if we are reversing the situation, APC is now in government after having chased PDP out, and they are facing the same thing. So our politicians should know that it's not about political party or political actors, but about the interests of the country, because tomorrow APC may not be in power, but the issue will continue. So political leaders should be meeting across the country on taming the monster of insecurity, reducing the religious rhetoric, and then, of course, reducing the ethnic rhetoric that's ongoing. This is not a problem for the Bola Tinubu administration. It's a problem for all of us, because the U.S. has started ethnic profiling, profiling of ethnic leaders, profiling of political leaders. And if all of these leaders are listed, most of these people who are quiet in the face of these issues may not be able to have their houses abroad, still belonging to them, or move out of the country because of visa restrictions and all of that. So Nigeria is on the table, and we must speak as Nigerians. And then the issues of the opposition PDP. Well, these are self-inflicted issues, and we've seen that happening over and over. Will the PDP convention still hold? Yes. I mean, if the PDP officials are smart about it, they can still go and ask for a stay of execution and then appeal the judgment and then go ahead to conduct. Because if you look at the Damagun-led ESCO now, they just have about a month left before they're able to conclude their tenure. But the judge who delivered this judgment to has to be very careful not to destroy our democracy. Why? Because how can it be that a political party, a former governing party, doesn't have a national leadership after the expiration of the former tenure, of the Damagun tenure? Wouldn't that be a recipe for crisis? And that's why the Supreme Court has previously ruled that the internal affairs of political parties should not be tampered upon by the courts. But it looks like the courts are beginning to infiltrate into that. And it's like stopping an arm of government from not performing its duties. Can any arm of government do that? If you do that, that's a recipe for chaos. In the midst of what we have, the challenges and all of that, if the opposition is not allowed to go into the election alongside the governing party, we may have a crisis like is happening in Tanzania, where, for example, Tundu Lissu, the major opposition leader, is locked up. President Samia Suluhu is, quote, said to have won the election, but the victory cannot be celebrated on the streets because of what's happening. So we should all be careful. Every arm of government, let's not infuriate what is happening. And then in the midst of the allegations or counter-allegations of a coup and all of that, our democracy must be stable. We must support the current administration to ensure that we have a country to call ours. The actions of opposition leaders too must be called to question. Why is it that the PDP can't solve its own problem? Why are they embarking on exclusionary politics? When you print forms, and it's only one form that you're printing, like it happened with the likes of Sule Lamido being exempted from purchasing forms, isn't that a call for chaos? Well, there should be a very strong warning by the elders of the country, by statesmen, to the PDP that it is not the only opposition political party in the country. So it should not make the country hot. Let's ensure that there's an environment that works for everyone and not the playing of exclusionary politics.
All right, thank you very much, Sumner. I'd like to ask that you expand on what you said around the fact that based on the Northern Elders Forum and some stakeholders in the North coming together to have a united front politically, that why haven't they done this for other issues concerning the North? And I want to say this across other key stakeholders who see, the lives being killed and have done nothing about this. What do you think they ought to be doing to complement the diplomatic efforts of the presidency themselves? What should elders, Northern elders, be doing? What should the Christian community be doing? What should other key stakeholders be doing at this time?
Thank you, Ayo. Good enough. The leadership of the Arewa Consultative Forum last week met with the Vice President. I mean, they are holding their 25th year anniversary sometime this month. And it's going to be an opportunity where a whole lot of leaders will gather in Kaduna. But before then, we are in a crisis. Just like the Northern leaders, gathered together when we had a crisis with Niger Republic, with religious clerics coming together. President Tinubu should sit down with some of these Northern leaders, bring them to the, Asura Presidential Villa, sit down and issue very strong warnings. Like President Tinubu himself knows what is going on in the North. He cannot say he doesn't know. But the thing is that the fear of taking actions ahead of his 2027 presidential ambition is what is stopping him from embarking not only on these issues of security, including the issues of reforms. Don't forget the APC-led federal government had promised us under the Tinubu campaign organization that they were going to bring a whole lot of reforms. But those reforms, ask yourself, including the El Rufai committee that was a report that was submitted to the APC, what have happened to those reforms? Those reforms have not been able to kick off because President Tinubu is afraid that if he does embark on some of these reforms, that the North may not go with him. But the thing is about statesmanship. Must you get a second term before the country can be on the right pedestal? Mm-hmm. And also, our religious leaders and clerics and others, political leaders in the North, are we not tired of the killings that are happening? That's because the North is at the table of this conversation that's ongoing. And in conclusion, the monarchs in the north also owe President Tinubu a responsibility of meeting together to support the federal government to ensure that the statements that are coming out are statements that actually work for the entire country and not just looking like it's just an APC problem or a Tinubu administration problem. These problems have been with us since 2009 when Mohammed Yusuf, the Boko Haram leader, came on board and he was killed. But the issues have not been addressed.
Sumner, isn't it funny that all the things President Tinubu's government now, when he was in opposition, they blamed Jonathan for, are the things that are now happening. So, you said something, we campaign in poetry and govern in prose. So from your allusion now, election winning by a politician is more important than the lives of people being slaughtered in this country. And that's why politicians think of the next election and leaders think of the next generation. Sad reality of Nigeria. Thank you, Sumner Sambo, for the points you've made this morning.